We'll just leave me locked up there.
Okay, I'll call to order our special city council meeting workshop of August 6th. Focus is budget. Item number 2, discussion and possible action concerning general funds, so on and so on and so on. Leroy, I'll turn it over to you.
I might point out the action item, we're not anticipate approving the budget because that won't happen until we have the budget hearing in September. But the action item was in case the city council wanted to recommend some action or changes to budget, that's what the action item is for. I think we're going to dim some of the lights here. What I thought it would be good to do is to, it's psychedelic, bring back old memories. What I wanted to do was start out with the sales tax revenue, and I would point out that this is the sales tax for just the 3% that goes to general fund. It does not include the 0.75% that goes to the CIP capital improvement budget. And so if you look at the current budget year for the first 10 months, just under $4,200,000, and compared that to the prior year, which was the banner year. Through the first same 10 months, it was 4.5 million. So the sales tax that actually goes to the general fund is down 342,000. Just for interest, I would point out if you compared that to the prior year, the 17 budget year, which was almost 4.1 million, we're actually 104,000 or 2.5% ahead of 17. So if you didn't consider the banner year, we'd be thinking, well, that's not too bad. We're up 2.5%. And of course, in October, when we start this process over and we're comparing to this year, we won't have to show as much down, I guess. But that's kind of where we are as far as the sales tax that is going into the general fund for operations. It's down the first 10 months about 342,000 or 7.5%. The next slide I want to show is the use tax. And use tax this year for the first 10 months is 510,000. Last year, the first 10 months was 337,000. So it's up 51%. And I can't give you an amount, but like Amazon.com, when they collect sales tax, we get it in the form of a user tax because it's coming from through an out-of-state process. And then, of course, anybody makes major purchases for equipment and stuff, it would come in the form of use tax. So it's up 173,000 for the first 10 months. So if you combine those, the negative 342 from sales tax and the additional 173 positive from the motel or from the use tax, we're down $169,000 for the first 10 months in revenue compared to last year. So it's not quite as bad when you look at the two combined and the impact of the two combined rather than standalone. I would just point out that if you look at the motel tax, and I didn't have time to update this, this was a chart we did a couple of months ago, but through 5 months, if you look at 16, the first 5 months of motel tax was 87,000, and in 17 it was some of those numbers
84, 85, almost.
for an old guy, they're not easy to read. And then in 18, again, a banner year, 120,000. And then the first 5 months of the current year, it was down 18.5% or 97,000. So the motel tax is following the trend of the sales tax. And we think that is some of the reason the sales tax may be down is in 18, there was quite a big boom as far as oil companies working here and having people in their motels. And when that moved west,
not only are they not staying in motels, but they're not buying meals and other things in town. So we think that's part of the reason why the sales tax may be down as well. But that is some indication of another revenue source we have. Just to make you aware, we have been visiting, and it will come to you probably at the September 10th meeting. We got a proposal from Blue Cross Blue Shield to renew our health insurance with the current plan, and they are proposing a 13.5% increase. 121 employees are budgeted, so that's almost $100,000 increase in health insurance cost. And that doesn't include dental, vision, life, and accidental death and dismemberment. Those will be small numbers, but I just want to make sure you knew that it didn't include that. We are getting a second quote from United Healthcare that I think will be more attractive than that renewal. So we may look at changing health insurance carriers, and I think the city has had United in the past. So we won't get into a lot of detail on that tonight until we get the proposal from United Healthcare and have both to analyze and bring to you. But it's pretty obvious we're going to have some increase in our health insurance costs. In the budget we built, in the draft that was sent out to you, we put a 14% increase for health insurance just to make sure we have it covered. Oops, I went the wrong way. This sheet is all of our funds, and the way the city of Guthrie does their budgeting, they don't always show the fund balance. They show revenue and expenditures, and then whether it's over and under, but they don't show the beginning fund balance. This is all of our funds and the fund balance, and if you will notice that we ended last year, or the beginning of this year's budget, the general fund had $1,248,000. Our estimated beginning balance for the 2020 budget, which is the one that we're considering, we would start with $1,581,000. So actually, our fund balance will be better to begin next year because of the vacant positions and some other savings, and we'll tell how we plan to use that $300,000 increase. And then the revenue we're just projecting is $12,266,000 and expenditures of $12,625,000. So the ending balance would be $1,223,000. The fire department is a standalone fund here, and what we do is just transfer in enough general fund revenue to make them whole. We don't put any extra in. We just make sure we supplement all the other revenue sources to make their budget work. The Public Works Authority, beginning balance for the current year, it was $1,394,000. We are estimating that we will begin the 2020 year with 1.4 million, almost 1.5 million, and we'll end FY 2020 with 1.7 million, almost 1.8 million. So the balance of the Public Works Authority is going up. Also, capital improvement projects. We thought we wouldn't get into it too much tonight because it's going to be a special focus in the afternoon of our retreat on August 9th. So we really didn't get much into that, but it gives you an idea of where the balance is right now. Some of those funds, of course, are obligated to projects that we have determined to do. The other two that I would point out is on the stabilization fund. And if you look on the stabilization fund, the general fund stabilization fund will have over $1 million in it at the end of next year, and the Public Works Authority will have $875,000. So we roughly have the $2 million. Some people would call that a rainy day fund, but here we call it stabilization fund. And then if you look at the total, beginning this current budget year, we had 7.8 million, and at the end of 2020, we should have a balance of all the funds of a little over 9 million. So that is, and I have that available if you all would like a copy of it. The next I want to go into, and this is page 3 of your agenda packet if you want to look at it. This is a summary of the general fund and some of the things that I want to point out, and I'm going to concentrate on expenditures and revenue and beginning fund balance and ending fund balance. This is the current budget year. This column is our estimated, and then, of course, this is the proposed budget for next year. If you look at our budget, we had budgeted expenditures of $12,925,000 for this year, and revenue of the same amount, and we projected that we would begin the year with $1,248,000. So that was our beginning balance, and we were going to end with that. Now that we've been through most of the year and we do adjustments for vacancies and other things, it appears that we will spend $12,028,000, and our revenue is $12,361,000. So we will have $333,000 more revenue than expenditure. So that would mean our ending balance would be 1.5 as compared to start at 1.2. The budget we're bringing to you is not a true balanced budget, but it's a modified balanced budget. What we did to make the 2020 budget work is our goal was to keep the $1,248,000 beginning balance throughout next year, but we were going to use the $333,000 savings that we had this year and apply it to next year's budget to balance that budget. So we would have $12,625,000 budgeted expenditures in the general fund, but our projected revenue is $12,266,000. So that means our budget would be $358,000 more expenditures than revenue, and that's why we're using the $330,000 that we didn't spend this year to fund that. We're $25,000 off. We will need to, if we're going to stick to that, we would need to reduce our expenditure by $25,000. But again, we plan to use the surplus from this year's budget. Instead of going into balance, would go to pay for next year's expenses. We're trying to maintain a balance in the general fund of 1.2 million. And of course, that will supplement the stabilization fund of $1 million. In 2020, we're 25,000 from that goal right now with our draft budget. Our budget does include step increases for all employees that qualified for step increases, but does not include any cost of living adjustment. We're not proposing any new positions. However, with this methodology, if we fill, I'm sorry, I misspelled that, all of the vacant positions in FY '20, the city has roughly 12 to 24 months to either enhance revenue or reduce cost. We can't, it's not a sustainable approach that we can do long-term. So over the next 2 years, if we use this approach, everybody needs to be on notice that over that 2-year period, we're going to have to look at ways to enhance revenue or find ways to reduce our operating expenses. So that's a summary of the general fund. The next sheet I have is on the fire department. And there, I would just point out the dependency on the general fund has went down between the current year budget and the budget we're discussing now for FY 2020. That is page 27. The transfer from the general fund will be down 110,000. Ambulance fees will be up 134,000, and that's from the recent Medicare Medicaid supplement payment that Fire Chief Eric Harlow presented to you, I think, the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. And then with the creation of the new EMS district, we're estimating a partial year of revenue from that source of 69,000. When we get a full year, it'll be more, but we're only projecting we'll get a partial this year. We're also exploring options on a more effective billing service. We have retained a collection agency to try to collect a higher percentage of the bills. And we're also trying to become eligible for the state income tax intercept program. And for you that are not familiar with that, court fines and some other costs, if you get a state income tax refund, municipalities can submit those debts to the state, and if you get a state income tax refund, that comes from your income tax refund subtracted off of it before you get it. We're trying to get the ambulance billing eligible for that so that if someone has a unpaid ambulance bill, we turn it in. If they have a tax refund coming, we would get paid our ambulance bill before they got any tax refund. So we're looking at ways to enhance the revenue stream for fire EMS department. This is page 35 in your agenda packet, and this
Do you want
is,
questions as you go along?
no, I don't want any questions. Yes,
Okay.
sir, you can, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. You can ask questions.
Well, Chief, I noticed that on EMS, that we've got salaries going up and overtime also going up, unless I misread it. And my general feeling is if our salaries are going up, we're filling all the positions, and overtime should go down. Am I misunderstanding the numbers there, Chief?
There's a discrepancy between the FY '19 budget and proposed FY '20 due to some payroll errors this year. If you'll look, there's.
Well,
EMS, we got some people being paid out of the wrong accounts. Those will be corrected come October 1, so the numbers are gonna be skewed for this year.
Okay, I'm talking about the estimate of what we're actually paying, and if the numbers I'm looking at for EMS, it's 619,000 going up to 809 salaries.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. We've got people coming out of suppression this year that should have came out of EMS.
Oh, so you had them in the wrong category?
The page before that, you'll see it'll balance back out.
Well, I was wondering about that, because, yeah, just before that, they actually both went down, so I was wondering how you did that, but okay, so,
We have two or
so,
three people coming out of.
so the people are shifting to different categories.
They should have been there to begin with, and it was an error between us on payroll. We're leaving it as is, because we're trying to do it in the middle of the year, and come October 1, they'll be corrected and come out of the right account.
Good, thank you.
We good?
Good for me.
Okay, the next one is summary of the Public Works Authority, and this is page 35 in your agenda packet. And again, if you look at the FY19 budget, our estimated expenditures for the 19 budget was 8.5 million. We're estimating we'll only spend 8.3. Our revenue, we were anticipating 8.6, almost 8.7. Now that we're mostly through the year, we've adjusted that to an estimated 8.5. But that still means that our expenditures are 198,000, almost 200,000 below our revenue. So there will be an increase in the fund balance. We started the year with 1.3 million roughly, and we will end the year almost at 1.5 million in the Public Works Authority. And we anticipate in the budget we proposed, again, expenditures will be almost $300,000 less than revenue. So again, the fund balance will go up again next year. And that's a good thing because we have some major needs in the utility area, not only the wastewater treatment plant that we have to address with the new wastewater treatment plant, but we also have a lot of water lines and sewer lines to replace. So getting more dollars in that fund is important. The next sheet is page 32 in your agenda packet. And it's a little confusing when you look at it, but back when the city did, and Kim can correct me if I'm wrong, but back when the city did some of the utility revenue bonds, they did a credit enhancement where they guaranteed it with our sales tax revenue. So our sales tax revenue that goes in the general fund then gets transferred to the Public Works Authority to back that bond up. And then as that bond's paid, that money's freed up and comes back to the general fund. So when you see that transfer to the general fund and the transfer out, it's a wash. It's just moving the money back and forth to meet the bond. Jeff's making the fun of how well you talk, so.
That's me.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
I knew one of you behind me
I'm
was.
just agreeing with him.
The second line that I've highlighted, to transfer to the general fund, if you look at that, in 17 and 18, we transferred $350,000 from utilities to the general fund because our expenditures in the general fund were exceeding our revenue, so we were capturing money from the utilities. And you'll notice that in the current budget year, we've decreased that from 350 to 200,000, and we're proposing next year to take it down to 175,000. So we're trying to do a trend where we eventually relieve or reduce the amount of money we're transferring from utilities to the general fund. And then the last one I want to point out, transfer to the wastewater treatment fund. Right now, if we were to do a bond today to build a new wastewater treatment plant, our cash flow is such that all we could do is make interest payments only. And so we're looking at, does it make sense to go ahead and pay interest only, which makes it more costly? Would that be cheaper than inflation on the plant? And we're doing some analysis on that. But in the meantime, we have started moving money. This year, we will move $300,000 into a special fund to go towards the wastewater treatment plant fund, towards the new wastewater plant. We'll move $350,000 in this year's budget, and we are also moving roughly $300,000 plus in the CIP. So we're putting over $600,000 away every year building some funds towards the new wastewater treatment plant, so that when we do that, we'll have at least part of that cash on hand and won't have to borrow the full amount. I know those are summaries. Of course, we can go budget by budget, line item by line item. The department heads are here to answer questions. We can also, we can have a follow-up budget workshop as needed. We'd be glad if, once you review your packet, if you have specific questions between now and our next meeting, staff would be glad to address any questions you present to us in between. And so that's the end of my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Very good presentation. Guess I'll open it up for anybody from the council wants to have any questions of our staff people here, departments.
So overall, revenue is down 3%. Is that correct from this year to next year?
3 to 4%, yes, when you look at the balance between sales tax and use tax.
Okay.
So obviously, the sales tax is a huge thing for all communities in Oklahoma. And you've identified one of the reasons that we think sales tax came down from the banner year. The oil company business moving west. Have we been able to put our finger on anything else that would have caused that? Again, I know we're comparing against a banner year, and if you go to the previous year, we're actually ahead, but
We have not, we are going to, once we finish the budget, we've been concentrating on the budget and the getting ready for our retreat. But we're going to do some analysis of the top 20 sales tax generators and compare them from last year to this year. We can't give specific names, but if you look at our largest, and I think everybody can figure out who that is, generator sales tax, they're actually up this year. And then we'll also look at ones that we collected sales tax from that we're not getting any this year, but got some from next year. And we're hoping when we do that analysis, it will show us some trends that maybe might give us some additional insight. But it may be that it's just small amounts here and there, and we won't be able to identify any more trends. But clearly, I think the oil business moving west was a significant impact.
okay.
And I don't know if Mr. Long was finished with his question.
No, I was just curious if sales tax was down 3% and it looks like our total budget is up over 5%. We're about 8% off of where we need to be as a budget, as a whole. I would think we need to ensure that we're budgeting down and not trying to increase our budgets for next year. If sales tax, if revenue is down, then our budget should be down.
And I would point out, on your chart, the year-to-year percentage is comparing the estimate to the proposed. If you compared the budget to proposed last year, or the current year, our budget was 12.9 in the general fund, and we're proposing 12.6. So our general fund is actually down as far as expenditures that were projected by 300,000. Now, that doesn't exactly match what we're down in sales tax, but the expenditures are down when you look at the budget amount versus what we're budgeting for this year. That percentage on the side is comparing what we're estimating.
Okay.
But it's still kind of in a nice way. You've told us you're juggling, and it's not sustainable.
Correct.
So it would be better if everybody could cut 3 to 5 out of their budget.
I'm not going to disagree with that. At some point, as I indicated, you're correct. We're either going to have to, this will buy some time, but at some point over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to either have to find a way to generate additional revenue, or we're going to have to reduce our expenditures.
I would rather
I'd rather we plan for it now rather than be scrambling later. It'd be nice if we could add something more later, maybe, but not have to be making cuts.
I would rather our next meeting, everybody's found places that they can trim it down, and we don't have to get into the nasty line item business that nobody likes.
Tourism obviously is a significant factor in our community. And Justin, I see that we're talking about spending less on marketing and special events, not a lot less, but a little less. Are we just being more effective in our marketing approach, or have we found some different ways to do our marketing that is going to allow us to, on the surface anyway, spend a little less money?
Well, we're having to spend a little bit less money because of the decreased revenue we're expecting from the hotel motel tax.
So
So,
you're already adjusting for it?
yes, sir.
Any other questions from the council? Gosh. All right,
Bet you didn't expect that.
okay. I guess hearing none, we'll conclude our workshop for this evening, and in about 27 minutes, we'll start our city council